It's showtime. All right, we're live. Okay, Matt, start off if you want there while I start sharing and getting the notifications out to some peeps here.
Alrighty, well,
Hi, by
today's
the way, everyone.
episode, and today's episode is opposition research and understanding all angles. And we're gonna get into that, but I want to start off first by giving a direct message, to Trump, his team, anyone who can speak to the man, because I think lately he's been dropping the ball since the election. And it's, there's things that he could be doing that would give him a lot better chance in the re-election and getting away with Stop the Steal. So that's what I want to address at the first of the podcast. I'm going to start off with that right now. So Trump needs to understand, and everyone needs to understand who's a supporter of Trump and who's the one who wants to promote liberty and freedom, that Trump's opposition, the left, the communists, the Chinese, the deep staters in Washington, these people don't have any morals or ethics that they fall on. So there's no tactics that's beneath them. As we've seen, Antifa is capable of going out on the street and committing violent acts against Trump supporters. Doesn't matter if they're women, children. We've seen them harass families. We've seen them harass elderly women and elderly men. So obviously no ethics that way when it comes to violence. We've seen the media for 4 years consecutively label Russian agent. Russia. He's working for Putin. We've seen even the late night shows basically say his mouth is a jockstrap for Putin's what. So the jokes, right? They've basically labeled him a pedophile incest by making jokes that he wants to have intercourse with his daughter Ivanka. That's been pushed and propagated. We've seen the whole story of the PP Gate, where they supposedly had videotapes of Trump being peed on by hookers in Russia. So as you can see, the common denominator here, folks, when it comes to the left, the communists, whatever you want to label them, the Marxists, they don't really have any kind of ethics or morals or religion, if you even want to say, that guides them to makes them behave in a manner that is you would deem as a model citizen, a well-behaved human, someone who wants to, not commit acts of violence or hatred towards their neighbor. So Trump and most of us, we are of that mindset, right? We don't want to go down the street and beat up an old lady. We don't want to go chant down neighborhoods in the middle of the night and harass people. We're not of that type. And you see when a Trump rally gets held, it's mostly peaceful. And when an Antifa goes out and stuff or things break down at the end of the night, it doesn't get peaceful with the left. So this is where Trump drops the ball massively. He gets in the White House and he tries to appease the lefties. He tries to appease the Democrat or the Republican rhinos, the deep staters on that end of the bandwagon, the Mitch McConnells and all these type of people. Don't think that we think that these people are all best friends with Trump now all of a sudden, when we couldn't stand these politicians just 5-10 years ago before Trump came in. We all know that they were establishment Republicans. So Trump gets in there and he tries to play this holier than holy man and has this philosophy of freedom and liberty and all these things that we like to promote that makes us a good model citizen, but that also constrains us on the battlefield. It takes tactics off of the playing field. So if you're playing a game of chess and you're willing to play by the rules, but your opponent you're playing against at any point in time can make up the rules and turn his pawn into a rook and into a king or a queen or whatever, or just up in the table, you can't play with those people. And that's the left. So Trump, he's a great businessman. He did well with the economy. He was well at marketing himself to become the president, but he is no general. And he honors the military, and he has that weak spot for the military because he knows, the true, really, some of the manly men or the guys with the most intelligence are some of these, generals that know how to do warfare. And warfare is done on a multi-level environment. It's not just physical, it's informational, propaganda, could be biological. There's many ways warfare can be waged on many levels. And Trump doesn't quite understand all this stuff, and I don't expect him. For the majority of his life, he's been a businessman. So Trump needs to get people around him who are bulldog generals. And he needs to realize that no matter what he does or say, it's going to be critiqued by the left. He's going to be the devil. So stop pandering to these people. What I would do if I were Trump, he's got how many days now until he's supposedly, if he is going to be taken out, I think it's like 50 some days. Let's even just throw that number in the air. Who cares?
Yeah, it's
just
January
to get
20th.
my point across. He has like 50 days. What can this man do in 50 days to really win the hearts and minds of the people, to really seal the deal, to really tell people that the election was stolen from them. Here's things that I would do as a general beside him, talking to him to say how you can win this. First off, there's nothing stopping the man from pardoning Assange and Sweden and Snowden. Do it right away. What's the importance of pardoning it? Well, if you lose and Biden gets in and they pull the coup off and they get their man in, at least now you've freed some of the two of the best whistleblowers that'll be in your corner and could be propagandist tools then rallying after that you were a good man and look what you did. You could also maybe win over the hearts and mind of the lefties, the progressives. And I've heard them out there who are sitting on the fence and said, well, if he did those things, God, that might actually make me a Trump supporter. I'm not talking about the hardcore commies or the lefties. I'm talking about the fence sitters. These are issues that you can win people over on. Pardon the whistleblowers right away. He even knew before post-election that they got the shitty end of the stick. So now why in office did he sit on his hands for 4 years and didn't pardon them? This is the precise time that he could do it, and it would maybe sway a lot of more support for him. And like I said, in the information warfare, now he has two soldiers that are going to now go out and use that freedom that you just gave them to then spew propaganda for you, which is going to be, Trump's an awesome guy. I can't believe you guys chose Biden over a guy who pardoned these awesome whistleblowers, which Biden never would have. Step number 2, he has to.
I definitely, by the way, before you even go on, I definitely agree on the whole pardoning thing. That is something that I think actually should have been long ago, because like you're suggesting, there are a lot of people who, whether you want to call them centrists, fence sitters, independents, non-voters, the silent majority. I would suggest that most people, whether they lean to the left or the right, the ones that are typically in the center, that alone would have a profound effect in changing their outlook and their mindset towards Trump and his administration, because that would really, really send a very clear message that this is it's not even partisan, right? Because that's the thing. I mean, all Americans, I would imagine, or at least most Americans, are very much appreciative of the fact that they've learned about the surveillance state, or they've learned about some of the nefarious things that have taken place on behalf of the military and the kind of stain that has caused for the American people and the American just Americans in general. So I definitely believe that pardoning Snowden and Assange, and like you say, there's all kinds of areas after that fact where you can build up even more. Happened. Hello? Okay, I'm back.
You're back now. You're back now.
I'm not on Wi-Fi. Oh, here he is. Wait, now.
I can hear you now. I can hear you.
How much of that did you even hear?
I heard quite a bit. I maybe like 20 seconds, 10 seconds. Not pretty well all of it though.
Okay, well, I'll just finish anyways and let you get back to what you were saying. But like I say, I definitely agree, because there's so many other reasons and opportunities that would present themselves by having those two, like not just people that are very knowledgeable about what's taking place, the underlying aspects of the deep state, and the processes that take place, but by having all that knowledge, they're much better positioned to follow the trail. Like they are your Hansel and Gretel, or no, actually they're the one that would be the ones leaving the trail. But basically, people that are in the knowledge and already privy to this kind of information could definitely help a lot, and not just for Trump supporters, but for, like I said, all Americans to learn about some more nefarious things that are taking place. So I definitely agree. Pardoning those two gentlemen at the very least would be a tremendous help and a boon for Trump and his administration.
Yeah, well, Trump needs to ask himself right now, like if he's a general, he needs to put on that general hat and realize, what kind of warfare am I in right now? Well, he's not in a physical warfare yet. You can make the argument that the Proud Boys and the Patriots versus Antifa in the streets is kind of the beginnings of a physical war. But when I talk physical war, I'm talking civil war, gunshots, shooting on opposite sides. We're not at that point yet, and thank God we don't want that. So what Trump is at right now, he's in an informational warfare. So what he does is he throws information out there, and then it gets countered by CNN and all these alternatives, and there's a propaganda war that goes on. And the propaganda war is why 50% of the country is scared and wants to put a muzzle over their face, and the other 50% don't believe it. And Trump needs to realize, though, about that, he got the support of the Patriots on his side. He famously said, the quote is like something, I could shoot someone on, let's say 4th Street, I think he said, or something, some street on New York, and I still wouldn't lose a supporter. Now, the media went crazy about that. And they're like, look, you see, it makes Trump supporters think they're crazy. They'll support the man no matter what. And in a sense, yes, the Trump supporters are dedicated and will support him. And he knows, because we believe in ending the wars. We believe in all the stuff that he's promoting in his policies. The left, not so much. The left didn't get behind Biden because they love Joe Biden. If they love Joe Biden, when the Democrats were choosing someone to be the Democrat leader, he would have beat Bernie and all the other ones. Tulsi Gabbard, he would have got higher polling than all these other ones in the beginning. But no, he didn't. He was polling at some of the lowest numbers at the beginning when they were choosing their Democrat candidate. So we all know it got stolen from Bernie. So here's the hypocrisy in that, too. A side note, the left is like, you could never steal an election. You could never rig anything. But yet they literally admit, even the Young Turks are like, can admit at a subconscious level that the deep state Democrats stole it from Bernie, because Bernie, even though he's a communist and a terrible person, he did promote taking money out of politics. He would have messed with the status quo of the Nancy Pelosi's and all the deep staters who have enriched themselves on lobbying for all these years. Their salaries don't meet the way of their lifestyle net worths. They make $100,000 a year, but they live in $16 million mansions, is what I'm getting at. So Bernie Sanders was a threat to that money line. Even though he might have went full-blown communism, they wanted at least a fascistic capitalist communism, America style, because it made them rich and they enjoyed that. So they stole it from Bernie, and now the left's like, oh, they couldn't fathom anything ever being stolen. But what I'm getting at, I get off a track there. So Trump needs to understand he's in an information warfare. So he has the ultimate tool. It's called the Oval Office, right? He can sit down in the Oval Office in front of that beautiful Resolute desk. He can put on a nice camera, and the mainstream media will have to cover him. Now, they'll have to cover him because if they turn it off and they don't cover him, like they have tried that tactic, Streisand effect, folks, we know it. If you tell everyone, including children, don't watch that, curiosity is going to be like, oh, crap, what do they not want me to watch? And it's going to make it more exciting, and people are going to go watch it. So they've had to resort to the tactic, which is, we'll listen to what he says, but then we got to try to spin it. So this is where Trump needs to use the power of the Oval Office, which I consider his Lord of the Rings, Ring of Mordor. He has the Ring of Power right now for 50-some days. He has the ring, and he needs to sit down at the Resolute desk and give speeches. He needs to bring in these generals, and he needs to explain. Rudy Giuliani has the Hunter Biden laptop. He has shown emails himself and audio and pictures and stuff on his own show. So have Rudy Giuliani or have Trump himself bring the laptop to the Oval Office on the Resolute desk and start breaking down and saying, listen, we cannot physically have Joe Biden as the president because he's compromised. Here's the money that was sent to him. He's a national security risk. All the things that you wanted to impeach me for, here's the evidence in which he's all himself tied to all those things, not Russia, but even more nefarious places like the CCP and stuff. So Trump doesn't do this, right? He's been actually very quiet since the election. He's taken this approach like, I'm not going to do anything. I'm going to sit back. And I actually think whoever's told him that, or if it's himself telling him that just to sit back and be quiet, this is not the right strategy. Whoever's telling him this stuff for himself, this is terrible. Get on camera.
Well, I got to say,
Resolute dash and do some rallies.
Yeah. Let me just respond to that, actually, because I've noticed, because I still every day, even while I was working pretty hard and not having a whole lot of time, I still every day, at the very least, it definitely reduced my load in my online activity. At the very least, though, I did do my typical, go through the news of the day, whether it was early in the morning before I went to work or later in the evening when I got home. And I have noticed, it does seem this way anyways, that, Trump seems very muted. Now, whether it's the media just not covering him as much, and I mean, that's probably another aspect of it is, think about it. If you want Trump to be gone, if you want people to get over their adoration or admiration for the guy, even a lot of the Trump supporters is, just keep him out of limelight, because we know how short people's attention spans are, right? So I don't know if that's being done on purpose, or like you're suggesting or alluding to, that maybe Trump, even behind the scenes, is kind of sitting back, maybe conjuring up or figuring out ways that what he's going to do next. But yeah, I think
I think I could give you a insight in that and what's probably happened. I think he's got these people around him whispering in his ear saying, Trump, if you get out there and you speak right now, or you weigh in on these Supreme Court justices, or you go in the Oval Office and start showing Hunter Biden's laptop, that's going to be deemed as election interference, and it's going to be a whole repeat of 2016, and it's going to be the Hillary Clinton emails, and they're going to say, well, they're going to soup up the lefties and make the commies real angry and think that Trump stole it last minute. But you know what? Trump needs to forget thinking of the repercussions of what the left and the media will spin of what he does. He has the power. He's the president. He can go right now and go to any FBI office and stuff. He can grab classified material, and he can declassify anything he wants with a tweet. That's the power this man has right now that we understand. Like I said, he can pardon Assange with a couple of flicks of his wrist. He can pardon Edward Snowden. He has the power of the Oval Office resolute desk. Let me word it to someone another way. If Trump all of a sudden got intelligence that the Chinese were planning a strike and to go to war, a physical war with America in a hypothetical situation in 1 week, it would be the president's duty to then get in front of the American people and say, hey guys, we have an imminent attack coming in. We need to get ready, get the military ready. I don't want to hide this from you guys. You guys should know what's going on, right? That's kind of important. It's the president's job. Well, in the same way, the Chinese aren't rolling up on the shores with guns. Instead, they bought Biden off with a couple $1 billion. They have on audio Hunter Biden talking to Obama in the White House office in audio and video. Yeah, we'll take $1 billion plus from the CCP, and in exchange, we'll allow them to militarize the South China Sea, and we'll allow them to take some of our jobs. That's a traitor. That's selling out our nation. So that is almost as dangerous to me as getting a phone call of intelligence saying we're going to war with the Chinese in the week, and we better let the American people know. He has a goddamn duty right now to defend us from the communist takeover, which is Joe Biden, because we all know he's compromised and blackmailed by the CCP. We got these laptops, and like Rudy Giuliani and all these people have said, because the CCP also had them, and they were actually using them before, like, haha, we got your son's wiener pics and hooker pics and all this other incest crap and all blah, blah, blah. And they were using this material to keep Joe Biden in their pocket and to allow them, to militarize the South China Sea for $1 billion. And Trump's up there playing like, I'm not going to hold any rallies and I'm going to be quiet because I might piss off the media or the public, that I might be election interference if I hold rallies after when they're saying Biden won, or if I get out in the Oval Office and show the Hunter Biden laptop. Like, come on, Trump, we're in a war. It's wartime. You're not a general, you're a businessman. So then at least hand it off to the generals. Talk to the Michael Flynns and stuff. Talk to the men who are over there in Afghanistan and in these foreign nations who are actually 3-star generals and who actually need to wage informational warfare, counterintelligence, and all these multifaceted levels of how warfare is conducted. Because you as a businessman don't understand it. I that's fine. But Trump needs to get these people around him, because so far, 4 years in, he's hired, the John Boltons, the Jeff Sessions, all these people that failed on him. And I know it's trial and error, trying to figure out who's the snake. The biggest threat to a person is not the enemy at the doors. It's the ones who are trying to be your friends. It's the Roman guard that killed Caesar, right? So Trump's got to be careful. He's got all these people whispering. And A.G. Barr, in my opinion, is the ultimate saboteur, because he gets up there and he talks these big constitutional speeches. We need to respect the Constitution word for word, and I'm a very principled man, and I'm A.G. Barr. But yet doesn't prosecute anyone for 4 years. Get rid of this guy, because what did Jeff Sessions do? Jeff Sessions, went in there and he pissed Trump off. He wouldn't follow the rules that Trump wanted him to do, and maybe he gets some prosecutions done on Hillary and these other corrupt individuals. So Trump fires him. He brings in A.G. Barr. Well, A.G. Barr is smart. He's not going to get in there and do the same thing that Jeff Sessions did. So what A.G. Barr does, he tells Trump what he needs to tell him. We're working on it. You can't rush the process. Don't intervene. It'll make it look like you're meddling in the election. A.G. Barr is clearly an agent of the state. He helped his father help get Epstein a job and stuff. Like, there's so many deep state ties. He worked for the Bushes and stuff. Like, come on, Trump. It's time to get the people in there that you need to. Don't worry about the repercussions. Like, let me give you an example. If Trump all of a sudden made his head of the media spokesman, like the Kelly Kanye's and Kelly Kanye, and what's her name? Kayleigh McKinney.
Yeah.
What's the girl that gives Kayleigh? So imagine if for a unrealistic situation, can you imagine if Trump gave that position to Alex Jones, right? The left and everyone would blow their minds, right? And Trump would never do that because making Alex Jones his spokesman would be too offensive. It'd be too extreme. But this is the mindset that constrains us, right? I can't do that because of what someone might think. And Trump needs to realize his opponent doesn't think like that. His opponent lies, cheats, steals, bribes, and has stole the election.
Yeah. Well, you know what kind of kills me? Well, you brought up Obama, then you brought up Bush, and that actually got me to thinking historically, and I don't know if it's a written rule or just one of those unwritten rules, but historically, usually once one presidency ends, you know, they can go around doing talks and tours, talking about their administration, some of the accomplishments or failures, all that stuff. But typically, it's mum's the word, and they shut the fuck up when it comes to, you know, the next president. But one thing I've seen is that president, it's all been thrown out the window with such examples as Obama now coming out and basically, you know, I mean, well, Obama's definitely no fan of Trump anyways, right? And vice versa, I would suggest.
On the campaign trail for Biden, giving speeches.
Yeah, so, well, this is what I mean. So using, you know, basically his former stature as a former president to go around and politicize and propagandize, you know, the current administration, like, to me, that's just it. That's a no-no as far as I'm concerned. Then you've got the fact, another thing that comes to my mind is you got the fact that it wasn't just mere days. I don't know if the ink was even dry on the paper, although now that everything's in digital, not necessarily in print, can't really use the ink per se, but it didn't take long before they kind of conjured up and looked like the Biden might take the win to come out and start suggesting. I've seen multiple articles, like I say, a lot on CBC News and some of the other outlets, basically where, oh, you wait, Trump, when you're out of office, we got all kinds of legal, ramifications and accusations and charges and all these things that they're trying to pile up and use against him, as if they haven't already been doing that during his time in office. And this is the thing, Trump, I'm sure Trump run through his mind is like, yeah, if I do lose and if I'm out of power, there's so many things. But I think, once again, I would fall on the side of what you're saying. And it's like, they've already shown that the gloves are off and they're willing to do. I mean, come on, if the last 4 years hasn't shown you just how low, dirty, and underhanded the Democrats are willing to go.
Hey, and that's without the presidency, and that's without giving the ring back to them.
Exactly. So to me, it's like you got to do something. And like I say, you definitely want to be wise. You want to be prudent. You don't want to do anything that's, you know, going to cause even more harm for you at the future. But yes, there has to be. And I mean, come on, there's got to be some strategizers in there that's helping this guy out. And like, Trump's already a pretty smart guy. Somebody's got to be figuring out what the hell they can do if, and once again, we have basically just under 2 months, January 20th, before this all takes place. You've got this timeline, this time frame to figure out what the hell you're going to do to leave your mark, because all the marks that you've left, trust me, the media will paint over that shit. Now, you do have the one thing that I will say that will not be undermined, although once again, they were talking about stacking the court. The one thing I was kind of initially suspecting is the one thing the Democrats won't be able to take away from Trump is the Supreme Court nominees. He managed to nominate 3 Supreme Court justices, which is a substantial, you know, that's a huge thing, right? But if they decide they're going to stack the court and rather than having 9 justices, maybe have 20 or whatever. So that's the thing. It's like there's so many areas where they're going to fucking completely circumvent or undo or unwind a lot of what Trump has accomplished. And that they will be able to do if Trump does ultimately take the presidency. There are some things, though, like you're suggesting, that the Democrats can't undo, which takes me back once again to the pardoning of, that's something that you can't undo. Once that pardon's been handed out, right? You don't get double jeopardy. You can't go back and recriminalize or recharge people that have been pardoned and had their criminal convictions overturned or exonerated. So that's once again, doing that and making sure, like you say, if there's other information, you know, top secret classified information. Now, as long as, once again, you got to make sure you're not releasing particular details but I'm sure there's something that he could release. Like I say, we need information. That's what we need in the day. We need fodder to use against if the Biden administration does ultimately come to power, he has to at least stack the deck in favor of patriots or people who are going to challenge this administration, because you know they're going to have not just the power of the White House in the Oval Office, but they still got a huge semblance or majority of that deep state, that swamp that's still there. So they need, the Trump administration over this next couple months need to do something that's going to leave a legacy, a mark that the people, the patriots, everyone, not just Trump himself, can use against this countervailing force, these collectivists who are seemingly hell-bent on destroying the American experiment.
Well, I'll give you a funny analogy or another way of understanding it. Trump's relationship to the Democrats is like a boyfriend or a girlfriend who has a partner who's like, if you leave me, I'll kill myself. And it's an unhealthy situation, right? This person's crazy. You don't want to leave because they might actually kill themselves, but it's not a good relationship to be in. This is like the Democrats with Trump, right? They're like, if you do anything, we'll kill ourselves. We'll riot. We'll bring Antifa on the street. We'll break stuff. We'll say you stole it. We'll come after. And Trump's just like, right now, he just wants to stay in the relationship. He wants to stay in the Oval Office. He's like, whatever. I don't want violence on the street. Dude, that's not going to work, man. You're in a crazy relationship with these people who have no morals and no ethics, and you need to cut that. And you need to find the military to how to weed that out. And I'm not saying to use violence against these people. You can definitely put them in, prosecute them in jail. I'm sure we have more than enough evidence to do all that and use legal means to do this stuff. But you better act, boy, and stop playing like, well, I'm just going to stay in this relationship because I don't want them to do any harm on the street or to my patriots or do a civil war. It doesn't matter, man. Whatever happens, they're going to do it. And once you hand the ring over, like my father said, they've played for 4 years. They played nasty and dirty, and they didn't have the power, and they couldn't write the executive orders, and they weren't in control of the pandemic and the lockdown. So It's like they're sitting there telling the Trump, just give us the ring. Well, I swear we'll be good. Well, we won't prosecute you. We'll be sweet. Just give us the ring. And when they get that ring, it's just gonna be like Smeagol, man. They're gonna put it on, and you're done, Trump. You think your family got it rough now? The Patriots think they got it rough now. You think the censorship was rough now? Like, come on, folks. That's what I mean. When you understand fundamentally what we're up against, this is why I still to this day come out and say the Patriots are going to win, because I think if the Patriots don't win, then what? They're going to come for us.
Well, you know what? I got something actually.
Vaccine. They're going to push the Civil War.
Yeah. Well, I got something that's actually I think is really important, and we kind of touched on this on a past live stream. I believe we did, anyways, when we were talking about how Trump, and this is something obviously libertarians and Ron Paul supporters are definitely appreciative of the Trump administration in terms of not just more foreign wars and conflicts, but the fact that he's promised to bring the troops home. Now, this is actually one thing that that you can do, because as the president of the United States, you're also the flip side of that moniker of that position is you're the commander-in-chief of the entire military. So at that point in time, bringing the soldiers, the military, and we got to admit, there's like, I don't know how many millions of soldiers are positioned in all kinds of foreign countries around the world. Now, some of them you're definitely going to need a presence, but there's a substantial amount of those troops that definitely can be brought home. And especially some of these Middle Eastern quagmires like Afghanistan and places that you could definitely, and Iraq, where you could bring more and more of your troops home. But even in some of these countries, like think about it, Germany, North or South Korea. I mean, there's just all over the world. Like there's, hundreds of U.S. bases dotted the entire global landscape. If you bring those military soldiers back, not only are they going to be appreciative of that, and now you have an increased voter base that's actually on the ground of fellow like-minded Trump supporters and patriots, but you also have an automatic line of defense for not just your Antifa types, but anyone else on the left that loves to use violence and threats and intimidation as a means to an end. Because that's one thing about the military is, they're all they understand rules of war and engaging in conflict. So that is one thing you would definitely want to do, because once that's done, not only is it beneficial for the troops, they get to be home with their families, but now you've got, like I say, you've got your patriots on the mainland soil and ready and willing and very much capable to defend it against not just foreign threats, but domestic threats as well.
All right. So I just sent you a video on Facebook.
Okay.
And I want you to play it. And this is the Trump that I want to see. And I'm going to lay out the strategy of how I would carry out the next 50-some days for Trump after you play this video for everyone. Okay, very important information I'm going to lay out here.
Okay, just one sec here. Okay. Video.
Yep, send it on Facebook.
Damn, my internet's slow. It is slow. Okay, here.
So when he plays the video, I'm gonna get into and lay out for you guys if I was Trump, what I would do tomorrow and for the next couple weeks leading up till the 54 or 50 some days are expired and the supposed transition is going to happen.
Okay, just one second. Okay, hold on, I gotta move
Okay,
this
Trump. So if you're
back.
listening, if
Okay.
anyone listening, get this message to Trump. This is what I want Trump to do.
Okay, hold on. I gotta try to put this on the screen. Share screen. Here we go. All right.
All right. So Trump's picking up the phone and he's calling up Biden right now. Okay, he's calling up the Biden team.
So what would you do? What can you do? So easy. I drop a 25% tax on China. And you know, I said to somebody that is really the messenger. The messenger is important. I could have one man say, we're going to tax you 25%. And I could say another, listen, you motherfuckers, we're going to tax you 25%.
All right. Put me back up on the screen now.
What?
Put me back up on the screen. I'll lay it out for everyone now.
Okay, put you back up on the screen.
All right, Trump. So here's what you do. You make the call or you get one of your baddest ass generals in the office to make the call. He calls up the Biden team. He goes, listen, go. All right, listen, you motherfuckers. We've played around enough. We're 54 days out. What's going to happen is called the trickle pressure effect. Trump's going to get in the Oval Office for the next 54 days. Each day, what's going to happen is going to get worse and worse and worse for you guys. First day, he's going to come out. He's going to start pardoning all your biggest enemies and all your biggest whistleblowers. Second day, he's going to come out. He's going to make a hard stance approach to the American people that he's going to bring the troop home, and he supports it. And then that if this stuff blows over, he's going to be pushing for peace. Next, after that, he's going to give a speech talking about how he's not going to be pro-lockdown, and he's going to give a speech telling everyone that he is not mandatory vaccine, but that it's optional, just to quell the minds of the patriots. And then at that point, if you guys still haven't felt the pressure, we're going to call it the 2-week zone out of hell for you guys. And Trump's going to get in the Oval Office, you motherfuckers. And he's going to sit there. And he's going to put your son's nasty photos up there. And we're going to blast you in the Oval Office in front of the Resolute desk to show the communist takeover you are for all the American public to see. You're not going to be able to ignore it with your media. And I'm going to sit there and talk to the American people. And I'm going to tell them, you're compromised. The generals in the army are on my side. You're in the pockets of the Chinese. We have to prosecute this. We have to look into it. The mail-in voting, all that stuff was a disaster. So if you want to do a re-election, that's fine. But at this point in time, you need to back down, call it off, and we need to look into what's going on here on this laptop. And if not, well, like, come try to get me, boys, and have the generals maybe start getting the tanks in front of the White House. Because this is where we're at, folks. We're in battle time. Trump needs to get, like he said, it's all about the messenger. He needs a messenger out there to the Biden folks because they didn't get it. When I watched Biden's speech the night of the election, he brought Hunter Biden up on stage holding a baby, holding his father's hand in the sky. You know what that was? That was the messenger telling Trump and all the Trump administrations the biggest middle finger saying, look, we even got the pedophile holding a baby. We don't care. So you know what, Trump? You need to do the same thing to them. You need to take the gloves off. This whole sitting around, not being quiet, hasn't done any kind of speeches since that. This is not going to work. Get out there or put the generals out there because I know they're foaming at the mouth to actually do the right thing. You already admit you have majority of the patriots on your side, over half the country on your side. You have law enforcement on your side, and you have the army on your side. Who cares what the mainstream media and the fake polls are going to say? Let them try something physical. We have all the guns. We have the army. We have the police. Let the lines be made. Let the authoritarian cops go and try their shit and let their patriot cops put them in check. Because it's time for people to shut up and show up. This is what we need now.
Well, yeah, I definitely agree that something definitely is going to have to take place because I got to tell you, although I've been preparing, because if there's one thing I have become pretty good at over the last decade is dealing with disappointment because it's something that unfortunately
what Trump needs to realize is if he doesn't do this, here's what Trump needs to realize. If he doesn't do this, that's fine. He doesn't have to be that manly a man to take. That's a hell of a thing I'm calling on, right? That's a hell of a task. You know, you could look back in history, whether it was Leonidas, Alexander. I know the stature of men it takes to look down an army that maybe even dwarfs yours and say, I respect my principles. I'm not bending the knee. I don't know if Trump is that man. That's fine. He doesn't have to, but he needs to understand the repercussions of not. He doesn't, and he gets out. We go into more lockdowns. We go into more communism. We go into more authoritarianism, and more people die. So yeah, Trump can walk away from that, but the blood on his hands now after, and the stuff that's coming to his family, to his lineage after down the road, to his grandkids and all the stuff, because they're not going to let it go, Trump. They're not just going to let your family walk away talking all this crap about them all this time, and 4 years put their plan on hold. So man, this is what Trump needs to realize. Either you do it, or you be the coward and walk away, and that's fine. It's going to cost millions of more lives because you didn't take the initiative.
Well, you know what I definitely am overly concerned about right now is how this all unfolds. And the media is already, I guarantee they've already got half the story written, right? Biden wins. He gets, he gets whatever the hell appointed or whatever they do there on January 20th. He gets to make his big thing and go into the Oval Office and all that stuff. Next thing you know, because we're already hearing, and today I seen the CBC News, they're reporting that basically the US and the UK are starting to get to the point where they're getting ready to roll out these vaccines here, right? Just in time for the transition, so that once Biden takes office, and this is the way they're wanting this to unfold, now there's a vaccine. Oh, all of a sudden, look, you're allowed to come outside now, right? You just got to take your vaccine, of course, which will be definitely something that will be used to force and thrust upon the people. But most people will accept it because they'll be, at that point in time, so sick and fucking tired and fed up with these lockdowns. They'll be like, just do whatever, man. Vote me whatever. Just please give me a little bit of freedom, right? And then once those people that have been sitting on their hands and, obviously not consuming nearly as much because and then, like I say, they start getting some of these green economy jobs. I think what they'll do, and I think this is their plan, is to get it. Because once you get the economy, if there's one thing I do know for certain, is if you get in an economy and people opened up after all this pent up, those animal spirits have been suppressed. The animal spirits in the American society is pure consumer driven, as we know. All these consumption habits and consumer-driven ambitions, and like I say, Americans just love it. Give them the ability to do this, they'd be able to step outside and then get any semblance of the economy starting to get even remotely near how Trump was starting to do. And then I firmly believe that you'll get a substantial portion of that population at that point, they won't give a fuck if the devil himself, the horns are growing out the side of his head. As long as they can get back to their mindless consumption and ability to alleviate all the bullshit concerns about the real devastating world around them by, finding more and more ways to distract themselves, by consuming goods or going on big spending sprees. I really genuinely worry about that because, and here's the thing. I think about how did this stuff take place? Well, it's not even that long ago. If you go back, and this is something I've been doing, I recommend you and anyone that ends up watching this stream, is this to me, and I actually wrote a thing down. How did I write that? Because I'm going to cover it even more extensively. But this, what we got right here, and what they've been pushing for, well, they call it the Green Deal. But basically,
fix your mic. I think you still have it switched over.
Oh yeah, basically, or the Great Reset, whatever they're trying to use it. But I coined a term. It's called the New Deal, and that's really genuinely what I firmly believe is generations fuck over successive generations. And it's not just generational, but it seems to be predominantly mostly. And then to paint over all the bad things that you've done is you just, prop up the next generation with gifts or proceeds of theft or forced wealth and income redistribution, whatever needs to take place to alleviate their concerns and getting them back to not being pissed off about all the terrible ways you treated them, right? Because people can forget real easily, right? And that's the thing. I really suspect that this New Deal is gonna be just like the old New Deal, and just like the old New Deal that happened back in the day. People I'm sure there was lots of argumentation. I'm sure there was lots of pushback and shoving against it. And no, we don't want this to happen, right? But it did happen. It did take place, and the world unfolded. Now, obviously, there was negative consequences for some people, but there was enough benefit for enough people in society that they accept it accepted it because they benefited from it. And that's what I worry about today is there's enough people, both Gen Xers, millennials, and even some Gen Zers that may benefit from this great reset. I mean, think of it. I mean, even yourself with the student loans. What if they come out and tell you, hey, we're going to fucking abolish or we're going to eliminate your student loans? No problem whatsoever. And all you got to do, just get your vaccine, make sure you're wearing. Like I say, I firmly believe that when the time comes, that they're going to have enough people in the population of all the countries around the world, which is why this is taking place globally, right? That just keep the animal spirits suppressed long enough, and eventually they'll be just like a spring, and they'll recoil right back and want to get back into their old habits, their own spending behaviors, and their own consumption-minded way of living. And I firmly believe that that's what they're going to do, and that's how they're going to paint over all the shit they've been doing for the last 4 years and even longer. And that's the thing that I worry about the most, is how easily people can be manipulated if you just hand them off enough money and give them the ability to spend.
Well, these people need to realize. So here's what I would say to those people. Look throughout history and point to me anywhere that you give human beings massive amounts of power over other human beings, and it's worked out very well. It's a natural instinct for human beings. Once you just look at the Milgram experiments, look at the Stanford prison experiments, and just look at how human biology works and how our brains work and how humans react once they achieve a power and control over another human being, it goes to our head. So I would say to those people that it sounds great. They're going to wipe your student loan debt. It sounds great. And maybe it will be great for the first 5-10 years. And maybe they will be very nice masters and they'll do good things for you. But what happens generationally, what's happened with the fall of Rome, the fall of Greece, the fall of many great generations and civilizations throughout thousands of years of history, why they've always boomed and bust, what has always happened. So that's why I say to these people, you're going to look back at the history and you're going to say, give them another chance with power, then you're an idiot. So what's going to happen, folks, and what the whole goal here is I'm not so naive to think that totalitarianism is not accomplishable, because every day I look at North Korea right now, and there's not a full-blown revolution to kill Kim Jong-un in his own country, and the North Koreans aren't having a civil war, shows me propaganda, brute force can be effective to control humans to a T.
Yeah.
North Korea is an example. I don't look at a North Korean. I'm not a racist.
But you know what? It's not even the propaganda.
Look at a North Korean and think that, that I'm some kind of different because I'm a white man, that I can't if I walked a mile in his shoes, was told that if you speak out, we'll kill your generations. We've propagandized you for generations, not even know what the word freedom means. Anything you ever do is we tell you Kim Jong-un can hear your dreams. So I'm not naive to think that if I was grown up in that environment, that I may be living under North Korea without a civil war and totally acceptable Stockholm Syndrome to freedom, or to not having freedom. So that's why I look at Canadians, I look at Americans, say, listen, folks, we're literally the bastions of hope to these other nations. They put a firewall up and don't allow even flyers, movies, and magazines in, because they don't want the people to see, oh my God, what even a magazine looks like, because it might show them what people can dress free, and it might show culture. That's how damaging that is to the propaganda, the control, and brainwashing it is to the North Korean people. So I look at what's happening on a global scale, like you said, the Great Reset. They're just telling you what you want to hear, and they'll give you it for the first 5-10 years. And as the shackles go on, once they have them, once they have the robo-soldiers in place, the mandatory vaccines, the military on the street, the COVID camps, everything already prepped, you're already gotten used to the facial recognition, wearing the mask, and that's when it happens really quick. It's not a gradual. It's gradual until the end. And what's the predator do? Bang, right? The crocodile creeps in the water, and it's fast at the end, right? And this is what we're seeing. The predator, he's creeping, and they're just waiting to get the shackles on and get Canadians used to no longer freedom and getting used to, communism will pay your debt. And then 5 years out from that is the Venezuela, is the crap, is the...
Yeah, but nobody cares about the 5 years out. That's the issue, though. Nobody's going to care about the 5 years out.
So then what we're dealing with, Dad, is low IQ, because IQ is
exactly right.
IQ is correlated to deferral of gratification. So it's like, I can give you $1 million today, but we'll kill you in a month. I guess, yeah, we're dealing with low
Yeah,
IQ
but
people
think
who
about it.
spend.
What part of the world that you live in, even in your own personal life, what part of this world that you live in do you not recognize and acknowledge that people are that way? I mean, I could explain to people all the time, and I've done this where I explain, yeah, sure, you can go get a credit card. Even when you get a student loan, they'll give you a credit card, or whenever you go get a mortgage, you get a home equity line of credit. And I can explain to people all day long that, sure, you go purchase that thing on your credit card and you'll be able to consume that good, right? And enjoy it for however long. But then the bill comes later, comes due. But people like don't make that. And with your interest rate, I'll suggest to people, well, if you only make your minimum payment, well, that TV that you thought you got a great deal on for $500, if you keep making your minimum payment, by the time you actually pay that off, you've probably spent, rather than $500, probably $5,000 on that TV. But people are always willing. That's the thing, for immediate gratification. And we've been programmed for such a long time through many different facets, whether it's through propaganda, sales advertising, media, to accept immediate gratification and don't even think about the long run. That's literally how most people have been taught these days. Forget about the long run, because tell you the truth, in the long run, what people think today is, yeah, sure, bad stuff's going to happen. But what has been the precedent example that's shown every time you get to the point where all these bad things are happen, or that you've been doing, the wrong choices you've been doing, there's going to be a bad consequence and ramification for that. But every time that happens, like the 2008 crash was a perfect example. Well, of course you don't just give people fucking ninja loans, like no income, no job, like here you go get a mortgage. And people fucking knew damn well what was going to take place. But what happened subsequent to that? Oh, they thought they were going to get in trouble, but in reality, no, the banksters got bailed out. Lots of people got bailed out. So
Okay,
like,
but
what
I'm banking on is all the people that didn't get duped in the 28 crisis. What I'm banking on is the Stefan Molyneux, the me and yous, the Alex Joneses. Like, what we're dealing with right now is the exact same predicament that they were in the American Revolution. There was a huge portion that would lick the king's boots if he came over, and he didn't want to separate from the monarch. So, there was the famous thing is the third.
But what they didn't have during the American Revolution. But what they didn't have during the American Revolution is Xbox, Sony PlayStation, Netflix, fucking virtual reality, porn till your eyes fucking fall out of your head. I mean, there's so many things now that, like I say, people, I think, have been conditioned to accept slavery. As long as inside that cell, you give them all kinds of things and substances to distract them so they can put themselves in whatever kind of world they want to. That's the biggest concern that I have. And I think, like I say, most people are willing to accept that, because the real world, the harsh, the brutal world of reality, of freedom and liberty, it's hard, man. That shit is hard. It requires personal responsibility, self-ownership. It requires a tremendous amount of effort. Right now, these are all great things and they're very rewarding. But like I say, people have lost the ability to understand the importance of that, and now are just more than willing to be taken care of from cradle to grave by someone. They don't give a shit who it is. Just take care of them, and so that they don't have to do that kind of work and put in that kind of effort themselves anymore. And like I say, we've got a large, substantial portion of our population that fits that mold perfectly.
Well, then you make only more emphasis on the importance of Trump doing the right thing, because you know what? It's a lot easier for the president to sit in the Resolute desk and say he's demanding convictions of Hillary Clinton, Biden, and here's the proof in the Resolute desk, than handing the Ring of Mordor over to them, getting out, and then the Patriots physically having to resist lockdown orders, or getting into the fight when they try to take the Second Amendment, or physically trying to do citizens' arrests of corrupt leaders. It's a lot easier if Trump does it versus if we have to take on that mantle of that war. So this is why Trump and Don Jr. and all these people around him, your father's got a hell of a task ahead of him, but he has the easiest path to victory with the least bloodshed, unfortunately. And if he don't take it out of cowardice, a lot of men wouldn't. I didn't think of Trump as the coward. He doesn't come across the type, so I'm hoping that he does. I just think he has bad people talking to him in his ear right now. I don't think he has the right people around him telling him the information that I'm telling him. I don't think I think in a fundamental way, he thinks too that everything will kind of be left alone, that he might be left alone, and it'll be just a little bit more debt and everything like that. But it's not, folks. It's going to be mandatory vaccines. I don't think the lockdowns are ever going away. I look around the globe and I see Sharia law in the Middle East. where it's in some sects of the area it's totally legal to throw gays off building, the highest roof in the community, stone people to death. I see North Korea, no civil war over there. I see China, which is one of the biggest populations around the globe, and they run their people with an iron fist, right? Like they have Uyghurs in concentration camps, they harvest organs. So I'm looking around the globe, I'm like, shit, man. A lot of people, once you get the shackles on, they're subservient, right? A lot of people are like, I guess I don't want a bullet in the head. I'd rather live another day in a concentration camp. So that's why there's a very importance on Trump, and he's like the tip of the spear. America's the last bastion of freedom, and it's a salt in the wound to all these authoritarian regimes when Saudis can look over and see females driving in America, or when North Koreans can get a DVD slipped in and they see how Americans live. Like, it's so important that America remains. It's not just literally. That's why I say Trump has the world on his shoulders. It's the freedom that we can promote. And if Trump can gain that mantle back, we have dropped the ball. Like in the 60s, you go watch the presidential debates in the 60s with Nixon and Kennedy and them. And those people openly talked about the threats of communism and why America capitalism was important and why the republic was important. We've lost all that. It's been 50 years of university social justice warrior teaching. So like Trump has a big job to do. He has to win back. He has to take on the world, and he has to do what I said to achieve victory. And then us patriots, we have to now do a better job of pointing the middle finger and pointing it back to communism and not allowing this whole we're just going to do business with China, or we're just going to buy products that say made in China. You need to understand these people. What you do if the product said made by Hitler's soldiers, if the little toy said Hitler physically wrote this and signed it, and this toy was designed and made by Hitler, wouldn't it be offensive if a bunch of people in modern society were going and buying that product? The left would lose their mind. They're like, you're fascist? You're buying products from Hitler? You're a fascist supporter, right? But we support China. So we as a people need to really realize that these people, everyone needs to isolate China, and we need to promote freedom around the globe. And Trump was doing good with that. He was making waves. I like how when he would do his United Nations speeches and stuff, he would promote those things. And that's why Trump's important. He has the opportunity to talk to these third world dictators and try to convince them to not be ruling with the iron fist. Here's the crazy thing. If you could really talk to a dictator and get them past their egotistical control of human beings, America's the wealthiest place on the globe. Why? Because if you allow people just a little bit of freedom, a little bit of capitalism, it makes a lot of money, right? And the crony capitalists can still kind of get a fascistic capitalist model and still make a lot of money. Look at the Bezos and look at all these other rich people in the politics and stuff. But these Saudi dictators or these North Korean scum, they're like, no, we want to rule with such an iron fist. So what I would do if I was Trump, I would say, listen, you can still be a dictator. It's just you give them the illusion that you're not a dictator. You're a politician. You give them a little theme parks. You let them go to work and stuff. And you're a dictator now, and you could be a dictator with 10 times the wealth like me in America if you just allow a little bit of freedom. So that's how I would try and sell the pitch to these authoritarians, because it's like, would you want to be a rich Saudi in control with $1 billion? Or if you allowed a little capitalism in there, you could be a Saudi rich nation with $10 billion. And this is kind of what's happening in the Middle East. Why Saudi Arabia looks like it does now with casinos and 5-star hotels and all these other things, and some of the other Middle Eastern nations don't, is because the Saudis realized that with all the oil money, if they allowed some American tourism, and they just sprinkled a little capitalism in on their iron fist rule, they still don't allow women to drive. They still have these barbaric rules, but they allowed a little bit of business and allowed a little innovation. And now they're even richer dictators and authoritarians. So, it's trying to win freedom over even to the dictators and trying to convince people. You could tell North Korea Kim Jong-un that, hey, you could look like South Korea and you could have way more wealth. I mean, I look at what's his name, Moon or whatever, the guy who runs South Korea. He doesn't rule with an iron fist, but he still gets all the powers of, that Kim Jong-un enjoys of ruling, and he's way wealthier than Kim Jong-un. So I don't know.
Let me just say right now, I have actually typed them down and I put them I put them as a comment on this stream. And this is definitely something even for myself. Now, I started already on the Mises Human Action. That's a really, really important book that I would definitely recommend. Now, you can get it online through the Mises Institute, and I believe it's even in audiobook form. So you can, if you don't have the time to sit down and read it yourself, you can listen to it in audio form. Like I say, it's called Human Action by Mises, and this is really, really key. And this is the thing, like psychologists such as Jordan Peterson and others, or if you go back, or Carl Jung, or even Freud and such, is it's understanding the human psychology and the human species and human action itself, and which is why Austrian economists are so much more wiser than your typical classical or Keynesian economists, is because actually Austrians take into account human action. That is the point, is humans, well, they are somewhat creatures of habits and behaviors in some way, but they also have very distinctive characteristics in certain aspects, certain ways. But anyway, so like I say, check into Mises Human Action. The other thing, like I say, to give us an idea how this may unfold going forward, depending on whether it's Biden or the Trump administration that ends up ultimately keeping the White House or gaining power in the White House, is, like I say, the New Deal. That's something I've been trying to do. I've been kind of busy as of late doing my own thing, but I definitely want to do as much like reading, watching documentaries, and learn as much as I can about how that whole New Deal unfolded. Because, like I say, I think this Great Reset, or as Alexandria Cortez, she even said, the Green New Deal. So they're basically giving you a sneak peek as to what they're trying to implement. Now, it's not going to be the same, but it's going to be kind of line or a rhyme with the old New Deal that happened. So that's something, once again, will give you a little bit better knowledge and understanding of what potentially might take place, or how this transition took place. And there wasn't enough pushback against us to overturn it subsequent to it actually being rolled out. And the last thing I'd say, kind of based along what you were just talking about now with Trump, is I wonder actually if Trump has actually read The Prince by Machiavelli, Niccolo Machiavelli, because that's what you were talking about, how a president or people in big positions of power or influence or rulers is what they can use to manipulate the masses. The Machiavellian model is very important, and it comes across as, being benevolent and all that stuff. So that's another really, really important thing. I personally, I'll admit, I have not read The Prince, although, hopefully at some point in time I can either garner the time.
There's a reason why the left has all the celebrities that come out and show support of Biden. They know the value in marketing that it is to get those big guys behind you and use their platforms.
Yep.
The right, we don't do this as much.
That's the thing. That's the one area, like I say, where the left completely and absolutely dominates, is the fact that they're usually predominantly, overwhelmingly represented in not just academia, but in the arts and entertainment, which are the things that have massive and profound influence on the human psyche. That is the area where the right fails. I mean, the right can sit all day long, right, and tell you that 2 + 2 is 4 and be the most amazing mathematicians, but that's not the power of persuasion, right? No. You need your snake oil salesman. You need people that have linguistic talents. And like I say, that's the area where the left massively dominates the right. If it's a sport, if that kind of shit was a sport, well, the left, they're the cream of the crop. They're the elite Olympic athletes, and the right wingers are basically a bunch of rookies or amateurs that are, tripping up over themselves in YouTube videos trying to perform the most minute stunts. That is the area, like I say, that they're massively overwhelmed. But that's the point of a libertarian, which is why libertarians can be identified as left or right, because they possess those unique characteristics, or at least many libertarians do, because they don't fall from either side, which is why Trump needs to stop surrounding himself with just conservatives and find more and more of those libertarians, because once again, libertarians can possess both and multiple traits that are conducive and align with having that power of persuasion, or being able to use, like I say, linguistics, salesmanship, the model of advertising, arts, entertainment, the cultural aspects that really do reflect and have a profound effect on how we think and perceive the world around us. That's the thing that is definitely the most important thing that I think the Trump administration, or anyone who's trying to challenge the status quo, needs to learn these days, is you need to get people that have that amazing power of persuasion and influence to be on your side, and be willing to be honest and forthright with the people, but use their amazing power of persuasion to get people on board. I don't think Trump has it as of yet. He's had a few, as far as I know, but somehow maybe their personalities conflicted or whatever. But for some reason, he's just not found the golden child, or at least a group of golden children or something, who has that amazing talent or those unique skills.
Yeah, it's because, like, let me give you an example. Steve Bannon's a good example. So Steve Bannon was like the strategist behind the Trump campaign in 2016, right? He was the one whispering in Trump's ear, saying him and Roger Stone, who ran political campaigns for Nixon, back in the day, those two together were basically the ones whispering in Trump's ear, saying, do this, do that, go out and give this speech there, give like kind of advice that we kind of give to him, more of a libertarian patriot kind of sense, maybe even a patriotism, like coming from the love of the land. But Trump distanced himself in the 2020 campaigns and put those people out. Now, his strategy was, well, you guys can do more work out there. But in all reality, it was because Steve Bannon will say hypothetical things that'll get him in trouble. Like, hypothetically, if this was 200 years ago, then we should, put, heads on spikes, whatever he said, or something like that. And clearly in the situation, he was talking, hypothetical 200 years ago. He would never do that today. We live in a moral society. We're not barbaric like that. But because he says those little blips that the media can take and spin with and run with and make Trump look bad, is why Trump's going, ooh, keep Steve Bannon away from me. Keep the Alex Joneses away from me. Keep the Roger Stones away from me, because they might say one thing that the media can, and that's Trump's biggest flaw. He cares too much what people think. Whereas if he just was stuck with his guns, that's what Patriots like. The Patriots like action, and we don't care. What do we say? I don't care really what Trump's saying, whatever. I care about what he's doing. What's his actions? What's he committing? So we wouldn't he would have been way more successful if he would have kept Steve Bannon around him. He would have, went back on the Alex Jones show. He went on the Alex Jones show before he ran for when he was running for the election. So he's seen the marketing value then. But then when he gets in office, he doesn't want to go to the Alex Jones show because he's banned. He's censored. That the news story will run with it. But what if we found out that when Joe Rogan has Alex Jones on his show, it's the biggest Joe Rogan show possible, when he has people, every kind of left you can imagine, on before that, and doesn't hit the same numbers. So Trump needs to stop kowtowing to what people think they're going to think of him if he does keep Steve Bannon around him. And he needs to bring in the generals around him and have the Steve Bannons, have the Alex Joneses, have the soldiers, the Patriots in around him. Stop worrying about what the media is going to spin. They're going to spin it anyway and do what's right. And that's how we win this thing.
Well, I wonder, this is something I've actually pondered in the past. I might even mentioned it before in a past stream, but I wonder if Trump has become so accustomed to be the man in charge. I mean, come on, that is basically, you could do a quick synopsis or summarize what Trump's life has probably been, is he's the alpha male, always has been, always will, right? I worry about people like that that have been in that position for such a long time. Ego and a fear of your Bannons or anyone else that's really highly intelligent or has that alpha male type mentality or status themselves. He's a little bit worried that someone might try to muscle in on his limelight. And if they're out there in public doing so, they might one up him, maybe say something that maybe even, sounds or resonates with the people much more than what Trump's ever done. Because one thing I will say, that Trump on the fly, whether it's from the teleprompter or kind of when he goes off, does his own thing. I mean, he throws some red meat, but he's not the most articulate man on the planet, right? He's not the most charismatic man on the planet either. And I think those might be some areas where he recognizes even internally that he fails and falters at. So he's scared to death, like your Steve Bannon, who does have a little bit more of that kind of personality, right? Or even your Alex Jones, right? Like Alex Jones has a very unique personality that's very endearing to a lot of people.
Can you imagine Alex Jones being the White House?
That's what I worry about.
Can you imagine Alex Jones being the Kylie, that when as Jim Acosta asked an Alex Jones a question, like, please, that'd be the best thing in the world for TV ratings.
Yeah. See, that's
like, shut up,
Trump,
Jim Acosta, you're fake news, and here, blah, 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 you supported the war in Iraq, and blah, blah.
Yeah, Trump really, that's the one thing, like I say, he just wanted to be, I think Trump's biggest problem at currently, and has been since
the Clintons have went to his wedding. Yeah. He did sway in that swamp for a while. That's right. He wanted to get in there. He wanted to appease everyone. He wanted to be nice to the Mitch McConnells. He wanted to play it nice to Nancy Pelosi, and look where it's got him. It's gotten him nowhere in 4 years, and they're about to steal the election. because he played too nice.
Well, that is like, to a degree, I would agree with that as well. But like I say, the biggest thing for me is he's just seemingly unwilling to relinquish some of that limelight and allow it to kind of be spread around just a little bit, because I really think it would have helped him in a tremendous way. To me, Trump, and I get it, he's an ambitious guy, he's very goal oriented, but it seems like Trump doesn't just want to be the general, he wants to be the corporal, he wants to be the MP, he wants to be there, he wants to be basically everything. So, and I get it, and he can fill a lot of roles, and he's very good, well rounded in that way. But the problem is, you need expertise, and you need to be able to point that expertise. But this is another big issue that I think Trump probably has, what kind of keeps him reserved from doing so, is not just his own internal maybe hindrances, and maybe not feeling quite as up to the task of delegate some of that to other people. But maybe the big thing, which has got to be a real thing, just knowing the fact that you're in the swamp, you're in Washington, D.C., is just plain ass trust. How the fuck do you know who the hell you can trust? Other than, like, for Trump, you can definitely acknowledge his family, right? He knows he can trust his family, and he definitely places some of the people in his family in situations which doesn't look good optically, right? But at the same time, it's outside his family where he needs that expertise. But like I say, how does he gauge and measure who he can trust? Because he's done that, the first few years. He, like you say, now Bannon, I don't necessarily know if there was a trust issue why they severed. I think it was just two heads clashing in what the strategy going forward was going to be. But I do believe there was probably
Bannon's a bulldog, and Trump wanted to play Tea Party. Bannon's been saying for a while. He's been saying since the beginning, get in there and fire all the FBI. Back when Comey was talking crap and doing the Russia collusion, Bannon said, go in there, clean house. They're corrupt. And then the team that'll come in will then show, look, this is why we got rid of them. Look at all the crap they were doing in here. But instead, Trump goes, oh, I can't fire Comey. He's investigating me. They'll say I meddled in my own investigation. Dude, you're the fucking president. You can pardon yourself. So start taking the falls, because you know what? Joe Biden president will pardon himself when he knows what's on the laptop. So stop playing by the rules when the left plays no rules. It's time to get, here. If I was Trump, and the minute the laptop come across my desk, and I realized, and I seen from my own eyes that video of Hunter Biden standing in the Oval Office with Obama, and them talking about $1 billion or so to sell out, to take money from the CCP to build up the South China Sea. When I was Trump and I would see that kind of evidence, I would have immediately got on the phone with like some high-end military generals that I can trust and be like, shit, I'm a businessman. This is now like hardcore CCP counterintelligence, blackmail, bribe. Clearly intelligence agencies and generals and stuff are involved from other foreign agencies that are conducting these programs. And so this is over my pay grade. I'm a businessman. I'm not really a politician. What can we do here? And then I would have got my intelligence agencies. Yeah, the same way that they used a FISA warrant to go spy on Trump for bullcrap. Trump used a FISA warrant to go spy on Biden. You just got his laptop and it's got some nasty stuff on it. Can you imagine if you start digging around his closet? So that's use their own tactics against them. Put your own military guys in place. Put your own CIA team. And, it doesn't even have to be. You could even go into the FBI and say, I'm going to make a special branch of my own guys, and you guys go do the investigation. You don't really have to report to the main guys at the FBI. He can do things like that. He can create his little investigation divisions, and that's what he should be doing. But he's not taking the gloves off, and this is why he distanced himself from Steve Bannon and Roger Stone and all these other guys, and it still hasn't pardoned Julian Assange, is because he's scared of what the mob will say. Right? He's got the girlfriend that's crazy saying, "I'll kill myself if you break up with me," and he wants to stay in the relationship. It's going to backfire for him just like it always does.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good summarization of what that whole thing is going. That's one thing I worry about with Trump, is there are some of his personality that conflicts with his ability to get things done. A little bit too much ego, a little bit too much, like I say, the man. And I mean, I can't blame the guy. My Lord, I think we'd all be the same way if you were in his position.
He was a billionaire businessman that got to screw business supermodels and ran a beauty pageant for the last reality star. We understand why he turned into the way he did.
Yeah, exactly. But like I say, for the sake, and I mean, Trump definitely does have that sense of patriotism towards the not America as in like the country, the state, but the idea, the foundation of what the American experiment was all about. And like I say, those who support him, and the fact that he definitely he feels compelled to maintain U.S. as that last bastion of freedom, because really, like, collectivism has taken hold throughout the entire world, right? Living at other people's expense, right? Socialism. The reason why these things are popular and profoundly accepted by a tremendous amount of people around the world, not only on the surface do they sound benevolent, but once they're implemented, it allows people to get away with, no longer holding themselves to any high standard, and allows them to kind of skirt through life much more easily and readily. And I mean, think about human beings at the end of the day. Of course, who doesn't want to make their life easier, right? If there is an ability to find a way to make your life easier, people tend to do that. Matter of fact, all the greatest advancements in human history has happened because people conjured up or constructed ideas or methodologies to make their life easier and simpler. So what the socialists, what the collectivists, what the utopians are all about are appealing to people's inner instincts towards, reducing their workload or having to be as productive as they are. Whatever you can do to alleviate that for the human species, like I say, that goes along with the human action. People will be conducive with accepting that. It's just the kind of persuasion and propaganda you use to get them there. That's the problem. Now, if people understood that, yeah, you're going to get that short-term gain now, but they understood that you're going to have to suffer those long-term consequences, then I think most people might make the right decision. But every time those long-term consequences have come to fruition, the central planners, the collectivists have kicked that can down the road where people haven't experienced the negative ramifications or consequences of bad actions or bad decisions, economically or socially. So I think people are so far removed from understanding how detrimental this stuff is ultimately going to be, or they just think that, well, if we can kick the can down the road long enough, well, I won't actually have to experience the hardships or the suffering from all my bad actions, socially or economically. Someone else will have to do the suffering for me. And once again, most people, you would like to think that most people wouldn't want to impose suffering on others, and it's not necessarily that they want to impose suffering on others, but they're all about, being adverse to suffering themselves. And that's one thing, like I say, human beings, just like in the animal kingdom, are definitely adverse to suffering, right? People don't want to suffer. And like I say, I really am worried about the fact that I think the left is using all the fact that they understand the human psychology and the human condition so much better than the people on the right or their counterparts on the right, that, like I say, I think that's how they manage to not just get enough people to support them, but how they might be able to railroad over the Trump administration and ultimately remove him from office. Although, once again, that is something that I'm holding and I'm waiting anxiously with bated breath to see how this unfolds as January 20th grows closer. But I'm even hearing a lot of staunch advocates and sort of supporters of Trump who are kind of come along to just basically owning up, accepting that he's lost. And that's a worrisome trend and a worrisome sign, because once the leaders, the most advocate supporters of Trump, start relenting or relinquishing their boldness and their brazeness and their ability to continue to support Trump, I think that's going to trickle on down to the rest of the people, and people will be willing to accept, like I see, this transaction, whether it happened as a result of massive election fraud or just by the fact that people are so sick and tired of the fighting and division. They're just let me just try something new and hope that it's going to turn out better. Like I say, I am so worried about that, and I'm literally on the knife's edge in terms of which way I'm going to fall, in terms of how it's going to unfold. And I would never, even right now, I would never make a prediction. I obviously hope that Trump does somehow gain his second term, and it gives us enough of a time frame that things will unfold and the American experiment will continue, and those changes that the left are trying to implement will never take place. Because that's the other thing too. There's all kinds of places in the world. I can't stand the fact that these people are unwilling to allow even one country on the entire planet to maintain the importance of individualism and capitalism at the center core of the philosophy. I don't understand why you can't allow that to continue going forward, why they're so hell-bent and determined in destroying that one unique aspect of the U.S. experiment where you actually had a genuine adherence, or for at least a substantial portion of their history, to those important aspects of individual freedom and liberty. I don't know why they're going to do it. I'm sure they have their own reasons behind it. Rest assured, there's some utopian vision of the future is why they're going to do it. But once again, they're not the only ones that are going to have to live with this utopian, or what I would suggest will be a dystopian future. The rest of us are going to have to too. So we're all along for this ride, whether we like it or not. So yeah, we've got skin in the game, which is why when people say, I just don't care about discussing politics or religion. Well, listen, politics or religion don't give a shit if you discuss it or not, but it's definitely going to have a profound effect and role in your life. So you might want to care about it at some point in time.
Well, to that, when you say people don't, you hear people nowadays say they don't care about hearing about politics. So this is the big problem with America, and the only way America and liberty and freedom will win in the 21st century. So the biggest problem I see with America in general is, for the longest time, America is like a big guy with a big fancy gun, right? America is like a big soldier with a 50 cal, he's sitting there shining it. And for the longest time, because America has been the military dominating power around the globe, they have the most tanks, they have the most aircraft carriers, they have the most jets, all the best armors and the best guns. Because of that, they've relied on it for so long throughout history. They've relied on the big gun in the room to control everyone around the globe. And what they've dropped the ball in is, while they were sitting there focusing on shining their big gun, China and some of these other countries have realized that information is way more effective than the gun. So I look at America, he's over here shining his gun, his big gun. Oh, I'm so tough. Look at me, I got the big gun. And the Chinese have managed to propagandize and convince the army of the Americans to turn on their own guy with the big gun. And while he's shining the gun, next thing he looks over and all of his guys turn on him and he's taken over. So the Chinese have realized, and these other things, information is more effective. So when I look at America and I say the bomb in the Middle East, and it's like, well, we're a regime change. We're bringing democracy to all these nations. No,
great point, by the way, Matt.
It's clearly about weapons, because you know what? If you spent $1 million on a missile to send over into Syria, if you spent $1 million in marketing and propaganda campaign to convince the Syrian people to value freedom versus tyranny, that would be a way more effective $1 million spent than sending a bomb over there. So it has nothing to do with regime change. And this is what America needs to realize. Stop thinking that you're the biggest weapon on the globe, because the weapons no longer win in 21st century warfare. It's information. We're in information warfare. We're in a digital warfare. So this is why, that Michael Flynn always says the thing, digital soldiers, digital soldiers. He understands we're in informational warfare. If you want to, because he was a 3-star general in Afghanistan, some place in the Middle East. And what he would understand is, when I go land in Afghanistan, I want to put boots on the ground. I want to send a soldier into the town. I want to get counterintelligence, live with the locals, find out what's going on. Maybe start to propagandize them to American values. Hey, look how awesome it is over here. This is how you win hearts and minds, not by droning and not by gunfire. So Trump and America and people in general, the liberty movement, we all need to realize now that we have to be better, like my father was getting at information. So this means putting out movies that are more libertarian oriented, controlling and dominating Hollywood, or at least having a chunk in the pie, taking it more serious, taking the arts and crafts more serious, taking the pop culture back from music. 50 Cent and Little Pump and all these other guys come out in support of Trump. How about Trump say, hey guys, why don't you make some pro-capitalist songs? Get the pop culture back. Use the information warfare. Stop thinking you got the big gun, so we run the country, because the Chinese have figured that shit out and we're losing. So America's been losing in the last 20, 30 years, I think on purpose, because the Chinese realized that if they could go to their leaders with briefcases of money, prostitutes, and everything else, that they could probably buy them off and take America over that way rather than by force. That's kind of what happened with the Bushes, the Obamas, and all the other generationally, the Clintons is what we got. So Trump come in here, he threw this all off, but he thinks like, oh, military, we got the big guns. We're not in a gunfight, dude. There's no shots being fired. They're censoring you on Twitter. This is an information warfare. So he doesn't understand that. He's like 70-some years old. Don Jr. gets it. Don Jr. is way more awoke. And what I was hoping is, I think he's like 40-something years old. And if Trump did win another 4 years, that would put Don Jr. at the 45-year-old mark, and he could be. Don Jr. would have made a way better president. Why? Because he's 40-some years old, and he's more adapt to social media memes and how we think in the right and how the libertarians think. His father, God bless him, he's good, but he still is 76 years old. And what do everyone say, even the Young Turks say? Why do we always got to have leaders that are 70-something years old? Why can't we get someone maybe in their 40s and their 50s that are more adherent to the values of the culture today rather than living in the past? So this is what we all need to realize from no matter what happens and we segue off of this election, is we need to get better at the informational warfare, and we need to get better at promoting the ideas of freedom globally. Even myself, how many liberty-minded people, even Stefan Molyneux, think to put their videos in Mandarin and upload them so that the Chinese can hear about that shit? We don't do it. I don't even do it. And I go look at my algorithms, and they're all from, Canada, US, and America, and that's great. But these people already understand liberty. But people, I know myself, I click on a Chinese film or a Chinese news station, unless I can get captions or some kind of way to translate it, I don't watch it because I just don't understand it. So we need to understand, we need to get very better at switching our materials to multiple languages and winning the information warfare. The deep states, the higher ups, when I talk deep states, these are little puppets. These are the people that are being paid off, the Obamas, the Bushes. I'm talking about the real intelligent people who run the world, who think like myself and who actually understand warfare like this, the George Soroses. This is why George Soros spends hundreds of $millions funding Black Lives Matter, funding schools, he understands it ain't going to be the weapon that's going to win. He's going to buy the college off. He's going to buy and fund off a communist revolution using Antifa, a culture war in the streets. He understands how warfare works on a multifaceted level. Trump does not. He's a businessman. So it's time for Trump to get some generals and people around him like me and some strategists like Steve Bannon and actually win the warfare here.
Yeah. Well, see, that makes so much sense. And you're absolutely right. Actually, I think this is the most important part of this entire video is what you've been talking about in terms of the propaganda and the information war. And, Alex Jones, you just got to hand it to the man for the name of this show because it's just so perfect, right? InfoWars. That's what you're talking about at the end of the day. And that's why even when I go back to what I was alluding to earlier, when I was suggesting that if they can get the economy pumped up, get money in people's hands and spending and release those animal spirits, that's the one thing, like I say, that's how the right wins, right? That's how Trump became so popular, was because, once people, and that's the thing, people will get over and forget about a lot of bullshit if you give them economic prosperity. But because of the COVID-19 and the reduction and the, how many people, millions of people lost their jobs, that's the thing, that one thing that Trump had in his hands. And how this unfolded, why it happened at this time, like I said, I won't get into all that stuff and the fact that whether it come from Wuhan or all that. But like I say, it worked out perfectly for the left, that not only did they have, like I say, dominate in terms of the InfoWar and the ability to dominate the culture through arts and entertainment, but now they've eliminated that one thing, or whether they eliminated, or like I say, Trump had the one thing that he had that almost guaranteed his re-election, which was the fact that he really had the economy built up and kind of churning rather well at the time. But without that, like I say, that's the one area. But like you say, the economy, it's gonna change, it's gonna go up and down. We've seen that's just the reality throughout history. So yes, if you want to win going forward, it's not just about the economy, stupid, although it's still a very dominant. But like you're saying, you can't forget about how important that information war is. That and controlling and having a massive amount of effect and persuasion over people's minds in terms of arts and entertainment and that culture. All those things have a profound effect on the way every one of us think and perceive the world around us. The economy will work for a while, but once again, once that fails, you better have backup, you better have redundancy, and that is why I think the Trump campaign failed in terms of reaching out and having the people that are the dominators in terms of the culture. Like, yeah, you should have not just your Stefan Molyneux, but maybe there's got to be at least a few people. Well, there's Vince Vaughn, right? There's people in Hollywood that would be more than willing to jump on board and create some opportunities for your pumping up the American experiment and getting back to, because that's what Hollywood was all about historically, right? Was all about, it was propagandizing the world in terms of the American experiment, what it was all about. All those great movies, television shows, it was all about reflecting what the American experiment was all about. But even Hollywood now, right, has severed ties and seemingly have loathing and envy for their own country. I don't know what it is, because they're all a bunch of self-loathing, probably because internally they realize how bad they are as people, that sometimes maybe in the personal lives, some of the sexual deviancy that they've undertaken. And I don't know what the reason is for, but yeah, with the divide between Hollywood, the arts and entertainment, and the cultural drivers now, and nobody seemingly willing to play center stage or be apolitical. Hollywood seemed to they're picking one side or the other, right? That's what they've done. So Hollywood, you can't rely on them. even sports. COVID has taken sports out of the equation. Team sports is another big thing to get people to collectivize and show solidarity. That's kind of been pushed by the wayside. So it seemed like a perfect storm. It was almost like whether it was done on purpose or whether it was just the way how everything unfolded, but it seemed like a perfect storm that gave the left, the Democrats, this ability to challenge Trump. And we all know that it was tremendous to even be able to do that, because Trump garnered even more supporters in 2020 than he did in 2016. So what these fuckers on the left had to do, the amount of persuasion, lying, propaganda, the constant jabbing at Trump, trying to take him down, the constant kneecapping him, right? I mean, they have had that, and they've been dominant in that role for so long. I mean, at some point in time, like I say, Trump and those folks got to realize that, that's where the true power lies. It's not in the missile silos. It's not in your F-22s. It's not in none of your F-35s or your big floating artillery or ships or tankers or not. It's none of that. It truly is having the power of persuasion and dominating the culture in the minds of the masses. If they don't figure that one out, we're going to continue to be on the losing side of things.
You hit the nail on the head. Like you said, the left have dominated the media cycle. So whether even if it's COVID or it's Russiagate or it's this about Trump, no matter what it is, we're talking about their issues, which means we're playing their game. So that's what the media does.
Yeah.
CNN will say something outlandish. Trump's working with Putin. We seen him last night at a pizza shop. It'll be total fake news, but then friggin' Ben Shapiro, the left, the right, everyone will be talking about that issue. And Ben Shapiro or the righties and stuff will be like, haha, can you believe CNN said the moon was purple? Wow. But we're talking about these stupid things when we could be talking about, hey, we're being taken over by CCP, information warfare. We need to start promoting liberty and freedom. So that's what they did. They've taken the mantle and they've controlled and dominated the media news cycle. Like you said, for 4 years, it's been Russia, Russia, Russia. And we've been on the defensive fighting against, well, no, it's not about Russia. It's not about Russia, not about Russia. Or talk about COVID when we should have been talking about real issues. And that's what it was. It was all a distraction issue. Let me get to why we outlined and named this video Opposition Research and Understanding All Angles. This is what I am good at and what gives me this ability to understand this information. And what I understand, I would say a vast majority, if not 80% of people lack. So when Twitter did his own research, Jack Dorsey even admitted the left tend to listen to their own materials. It's an echo chamber. And the right sometimes dabbles in a bit of both. Me, I understand as a general on the war on the war field, I want to know what my enemy's saying about me. That's right. I want to know where he's sending the soldiers in. What's he talking about? What's he going to do tomorrow? What kind of weaponry does he have? So I sit down every day and I'll consume hours of Young Turks, CNN, some of the most far left, communist, progressive stuff that I can find on the internet, and then I'll also go over on the far right and lift into those guys. I'll listen to the Nazi crap. I'll listen to the conspiracy theory because I want to take in as much opposition research, as much angles as I can to then bring that in and calculate what's going on. Because you're never going to truly understand what's going on in the war unless you understand all the angles. And that's what we're bad at doing.
Yeah.
And I don't blame people, because if you go and watch 3-4 hours of your favorite podcast, let's say it's Joe Rogan, you go listen to 3 hours, or Stefan Molyneux, or a 4-hour Alex Jones show. And then you try to go and listen to another 3-4 hours of Young Turks to get the opposite. We're talking 6 to 8 hours of material in a day. And most people can't do that. I get it. But what those people need to do is find out the individuals like myself, find a trusted member that you trust in the news cycle. And I'm saying you gather that trust by listening to the material, gathering it with your own influence, researching yourself. I'm not saying blindly trust, but you use people like me as a way to get that kind of information. The same way, you don't just go and start fixing your own toilet if you don't know it, right? You hire a plumber. So understand, hey, I work a 9 to 5. I only got 3 hours, 2 hours in the day to listen to information. So let me instead find the best possible way to utilize the 2 hours to get kind of every angle in that, rather than let me just consume my favorite content creator and live in an echo chamber. People need to start getting more diverse in their information to understand things.
Exactly. Well, you know what, Matt? I don't know about you, but I'm just going to mention right now, I think that this was probably one of the best podcasts we've done. I think you did an excellent job in putting all the points. And I don't know if you want to continue going on, but we're at 1 hour and 28 minutes now. And I do sometimes get a little bit concerned that if we go too long, that people won't necessarily tune in or pay attention. But if you wanted, and of course we could cover another topic going forward. But like I say, I think right now, 128, if we tied this up for an hour and a half is something I think a lot of people might, or at least, people would be more than willing than like 2 or 3 hours. But like I say, I'll leave that up to you. But I think you've covered it enough. I don't know how much more you could add to it that I think would make it any better understood.
Well, I can wrap up here in 5 minutes. I don't got much more. So the only thing else I would say is back to the message to Trump. You have 50 some days out. It's time to take the gloves off. What I want you to see, like I said, I want you to make that phone call, or your general to make that phone call. You get on the phone call with Joe Biden and his team. You say, listen, it's going to be a hell of a 50 days for you. And I'm going to put more and more pressure on to the point where you put so much pressure on the man that he backs out and he walks away and saves face. And how you're going to do this, Trump, is by, like I said, you first start off, pardon Julian Assange, pardon Edward Snowden. You're going to win the fence sitters. Plus, it's 2 soldiers after this. If you lose, that'll be in your end field, and it'll be very well for you in the end of that. Secondly, you must, what I would say is come out and actually use the Oval Office to say, I'm anti-lockdown. You say here and there, but do an actual statement from the Oval Office saying, I'm not going to lock down the country after this if I get reelected, and I will not mandate the vaccine. It'll be voluntary. That in itself, huge. You have to do that. Say that in a speech. Also, get out there. You still have 50-some days left. Why not pardon all non-violent drug offenders? We're dealing with COVID right now anyway. This way you can use that mantle. Most of them are being let out of jail now anyway due to COVID, so you don't really have an issue of that. But you can kind of use that and as like, oh, look at me, I'm holier than holy. And the left and the right both share that issue. So pardon all non-drug offenders. That's going to win over the hearts and minds. You can do that in 50-some days. Get in there and, like I said, do speeches from the Oval Office and detail as it gets closer and closer and Biden's not backing down. Get in the Oval Office and physically show the Hunter Biden stuff. Now, I know you can't show CP. I know you can't show too graphic material. Do it in a manner that's blurred out. Do it professionally, but present it in a way that the American people can see it, and it'll push through the firewall. And, if mainstream media ignores it, that's fine. Streisand effect, more people go and find it. And switch the vote. Playing the whole election fraud thing, yes, it's a valid thing to narrow in on, and yes, he could win on that, but that is still playing in their field because at the end of the day, the courts decide, right? And I thought it was the people got decided, right? So I think what Trump should do is pivot from we won off they stole the election to what he should have always been going with is Biden physically can't be the president because he's compromised. He's a national security risk. My generals won't even allow him to have classified material because he's going to sell it to the Chinese. This is the approach. Come at it as a criminal aspect. Prosecute the man. Put the people in place. So let's see. I think that was it. And declassify. That's the last thing I'm going to say. Declassify. Yeah. Because whether you're out, whether you win or not, you don't know. So you got 50 days, use them. Declassify the JFK files, declassify anything that we should know about the government internal spying, maybe show Edward Snowden programs on steroids, because we know it's probably even worse now, and just start declassifying everything that's going to make Biden look terrible. Declassify all the stuff. Maybe there's hidden 33,000 emails lurking around somewhere. Maybe there's a Anthony Weiner hard drive. Start leaking and declassifying the material to make these people look as corrupt as they truly are. That's my message to the president. Get serious. Win the information warfare. We're not in a warfare with bullets. We're in a warfare with words. Well, the sooner people realize that, this is how we're going to win. We're not going to win by sending bombs over the Middle East. We're going to win by sending pamphlets, sending DVDs, and brainwashing, literally the same way they brainwash us to love communism, brainwashing the globe and brainwashing the Chinese and breaking through the firewall and saying freedom is the best way to live. Look at it. It creates the most prosperity. It creates the best environments for family, creates the most stable environment for human beings. And it's the most moral way to live life. That's how we're going to win this thing.
Yeah, that was perfect. Actually, so I've counted, so is it 5? Because I think every one of them are like these are so profoundly important for them to do basically on all the suggestions that you gave up. I think there was 5 of them, but that, and especially with the releasing or pardoning the nonviolent criminals, like that's or drug people in prison or jail for that would have such a massive positive consequence, not just for the electorate and politics and voting and all that stuff and optics, but I'm just thinking just for the families or the children or people
He
that
wants to send. He wants to
mom and
send the
dad.
troops home for Christmas. Send the guy
Yeah.
in jail for weed to home for Christmas.
Yeah, fuck
They
yeah.
both mad.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That's stuff there. And that's something that has a massive, immediate effect, not just on the person being released from jail, but their immediate family. Like I say, their children, if they have any, maybe parents that they haven't talked to or seen a long time. Those are ways that has the potential to heal some old wounds for millions of people in society. And that is something that I think would be a great thing for Trump to do. And it's something that is in his power, his position, and something that he's privy to do. So really, Matt, I got to tell you, like I say, this was a really, really good stream. And I hope lots of people get to check this out, because those 5 points that you've brought up and articulated well in this stream are things. Now, it's great that we're talking about them now, although I think this is something that would have been nice to put out even prior to the election. But like I say, whether our small amount of people would have had much sway or influence, I don't know. But we're definitely discussing now, and these are very important points that not just would have worked, maybe in the past, but something to think about going forward as well. So thanks a lot for this great stream. And I hope, like I say, lots of people get a chance to check this out, because these are really important things that need to be discussed. And I've watched a lot of videos. I've listened to some podcasts, and I haven't really heard, getting into this kind of depth and this kind of important aspect of what needs to take place if individual freedom and what the American experiment and how many people. That's the other thing. I mean, the rest of us on the globe have greatly benefited. Even China continues to benefit. Where do you think all that wealth came from? Sure, they're producing a lot of stuff that we all consume, but it's because of that mighty purchasing power of the American people and all the prosperity that's been pent up and built up over, generations of that country, which is now all that wealth that's being produced and provided for all people across the globe. A lot of that wealth is coming from America. It's basically being transferred all around the world, but that means America had a lot of wealth, already at their disposal. And it's something that American people need to do, because that's the important thing. If you want to help people around the world, you can do so, but you can't give them the ability to use all your power, all your money to use against you to influence others to oppose you, because even the Chinese people, I would imagine a substantial portion of them recognize and realize that their prosperity and that rampant growth that they've been experiencing for the last 2 or 3 decades, right? Well, especially since they were allowed into the WTO, it is all a direct result of that American experiment and the American having the hegemony and being the world reserve currency and being able to produce and provide for so many people on the planet. So that's a great thing. And it's something that we definitely need to take place, and not just keep in America, but expand out to the rest of the world entirely. Free market capitalism is beneficial. And it's not even just like Adam Smith said. It's not even that you have to create it and set it up as being benevolent, but it will naturally be benevolent, because freedom and free markets creates that kind of incentive. So thanks, Matt. Have a great day.
Let me just plug first before we go. Then I'll just do some
plug away, my friend.
So, before I plug, I would like to say I think I've graduated from digital soldier to digital general. So if General Flynn could maybe get me a fake backer. If you guys want to find my work, you can find me. So I've taken up the task. I think that all the censorship right now going on and all the black holing of all the content on the internet is probably the biggest crime against humanity. I always am very sad that the Library of Alexandria burnt in ancient times, because think of all the ancient scrolls and ancient material that we could have had, how much history was lost in that library. Well, the same way that overnight they just get rid of Stefan Molyneux's YouTube channel, get rid of Alex Jones's channel. Those guys backed up some of their stuff, but they didn't back all up, because we never anticipated this. So I have taken on the project in my free time on a lot of these platforms, and I choose content creators who are friendly to me sharing and burning and ripping, clipping off their materials, because at the end of the day, smart content creators know I don't care if people use my material. At the end of the day, they're still sharing and talking about the material. So go ahead. And we take that approach here with our channels as well. So I have taken up the mantle. I am starting to archive a lot of this old Alex Jones footage, some old Stefan stuff, Ron Paul stuff, speeches within the 60s. And you guys can find it. I'm on BitChute at Matthew_Hunter at 1776. You can find me at Rumble at Matthew Hunter 1776, and my channel on Rumble is Liberty Hunter 1776. And you guys can also find me on YouTube at Matthew Hunter, or you can find me at Matthew Hunter 1776. So that's kind of like the theme that I'm going with. I'm just going to stick with my name as a marketing ploy. And like I said, if you guys find my work over there, it's going to consist of mainly archiving a lot of this material that I all enjoyed. You know, some of those old Ron Paul clips you watch from 2008, 2012, you know, that I think would be a tragedy that I couldn't show those to my grandkids. So I'm archiving all this stuff and I'm putting on the platforms. And you'll also see some of my own personal material like we did today on the platforms as well. And, you know, like my father said, very important podcast today. So if you can't financially support us, on which you can underneath the links of a lot of these videos, at least get the information out. And if you have ways to get the information to the president, even more and better, because like I said, these 5 steps, like I detailed, this is, I think, almost an absolute way to win. Each day it looks less and less likely, but I think with this pathway, it's pretty well putting the odds way, way, way more in his favor. And I think, you know, worrying about, well, was this vote counted correctly or not? We need to get to the focus, which is the guy even eligible to be the president? So that's how I'll finish it. Find me across the platforms. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, all that stuff too. Just search for my name.
Right on. And we'll make sure to get all that stuff, all those links placed in the description of this stream so that you can keep on top of some of this great material that Matt's produced. And I'll make sure to place a link to my Canadian Libertarian YouTube channel as well, in case you want to hop on over there and check out some of my content there as well. So anyways, thanks again. Like I say, we had a great chat today. This was actually very, I think, like I say, it's probably one of the best live streams we've done so far. And I think it's only going to get better going forward. So stay tuned, you folks, and we'll see you in the next one. Okay.